What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. And it is August, which means NFL preseason is right around the corner. Training camps have started for every team and things are beginning to ramp up. And the first thing that I want to talk about in this video is the Jonathan Taylor situation with the Indianapolis Colts. So if you back up to like last week or 2 weeks ago, franchise tag deadline hits. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard don't get paid, don't get long-term extensions with their teams, and a lot of running backs were very vocal about it. And one of those guys was Jonathan Taylor, going on Twitter and basically saying that running backs and not other positions in the NFL, mainly just running backs, are in this endless cycle where they get drafted, put in all the work they can on the field to help their teams win games, and they don't get paid because they're basically viewed as the most replaceable position in the league. And it's just an endless cycle that these running backs go through, and they can't get long-term extensions. And so Jim Irsay, also the Colts owner, he came out and said that basically what the NFL running backs are trying to do in terms of saying that they're not treated fairly or not compensated right is bad faith, because it's just not true. That's what he thinks. And then Jonathan Taylor's agent came out and said not paying your best player is bad faith, because Jonathan Taylor is up for a contract extension with the Colts and he wants around $16 million a year, and it looks like the Colts aren't going to give him that. And so last week or a few days ago, Jonathan Taylor actually requested a trade from the team. I believe he did it on Saturday, and immediately after the trade request came out, Jim Irsay came out and said, we're not trading Jonathan Taylor under any circumstances. And then he also came out and said that basically if Jonathan Taylor wasn't on our team or wasn't in the NFL, then nobody's losing sleep over that, and that everyone's just going to move on to the next thing. Basically saying that the best player on your team isn't really that valuable. And I don't really get why Jim Irsay would come out and say something like that. Jonathan Taylor may have had a down year last year, but he is one of the best running backs in the league. He had over 1,800 yards and 18 touchdowns in the season before this season, and he's going to be, if he's going to play for the Colts this year, he's still going to be their best player, because they got a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson, who was viewed as an extremely raw prospect coming out of Florida, going to the Colts. He's going to be likely thrown into the fire as the team starter week one, and he's going to need all the help he can get. Yes, he's raw, he has all the athletic ability, but people are questioning whether or not he can make throws consistently in the NFL. And if the Colts are going to do something this year, Jonathan Taylor is going to be a vital part to their success. Now, I did come out last week and say I get why teams don't pay running backs, because it seems like they aren't as valuable as other positions. Teams are able to find gems that are either like undrafted or in the late round, and they come in and are very productive. But at the same time, I wouldn't go out and say that your best player, the guy who's proven to be the best, at least best offensive player, because the Colts have a lot of talented players on their defense. Without a doubt, your best offensive player, maybe Quentin Nelson, is up for discussion in that role too. But your best offensive skill player basically doesn't really mean anything or isn't that valuable to your team. I just don't get why you would come out and say something like that when he's done all the work on the field and is looking to have a bounce back season with the team this year, and when your rookie quarterback and Anthony Richardson is going to have to show something this year. He was drafted very high. Some would say he was overdrafted at the 4th overall pick, so he's going to have a lot of pressure on him this year as a rookie to come out and show that the Colts made the right choice. And like I said, Jonathan Taylor is going to be a vital part to that. So we'll see what happens with this situation. Will the Colts trade him or will they give him an extension? That's going to be an interesting story to follow. And one other thing I wanted to talk about was all of the injuries that are going on in training camp right now. Earlier this week, Broncos wide receiver Tim Patrick tore his Achilles. And if you guys don't remember, last season he tore his ACL, didn't play any of the games last season, and he will miss the entirety of this season. So 2 straight years of being out due to injury for Tim Patrick. And even though Tim Patrick isn't some superstar wide receiver, he's proven to be a great slot number 3 guy for the Broncos. And if Denver's going to have that bounce back season they want to have under Sean Payton, they're going to need everyone they can get to help out Russell Wilson. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, that's going to be a great duo. But if all 3 of those guys were healthy, it would make the Broncos offense a lot better for sure. And then just looking around at other injuries, Joe Burrow, Bengals quarterback, we all saw that video of him going down with a non-contact injury in training camp practice, and even people who aren't Bengals fans certainly held their breath at that video, because even if you're not a Bengals fan, I'm sure there's a lot of Joe Burrow fans who just like watching him play, one of the brightest young stars in the league, and what he's been able to do with the Bengals up until this point. They were one of the worst teams in professional sports, really. They were a poverty franchise, and then within one healthy season, he takes them to the Super Bowl, and every year they're going to be viewed as a contender because of how good of a quarterback they have in Joe Burrow. So luckily for Bengals fans, it was only a calf strain. He's going to be out a few weeks, but it's not going to be something that should threaten their Super Bowl hopes for this year. And then when you go to Miami, Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey has a meniscus injury, and he also went down with a non-contact injury. So there was some fear that that could have been a torn ACL, but luckily they avoided that, and he's going to miss about half the season this year. He's going to be back in about December, according to reports. And so what the Dolphins actually did in response to that was sign Eli Apple, who was a free agent. I just think that's funny because of all the battles that Tyreek Hill and Eli Apple have had on the field in the Chiefs-Bengals games. Eli Apple did hold his own against Tyreek Hill in a few matchups, so it's going to be interesting to see how those battles go in practice. Is iron going to sharpen iron, or is Tyreek Hill going to establish himself? He doesn't have to establish himself, but is he going to be dominating Eli Apple in practice? That's certainly going to be something to follow. And then really the last thing I want to talk about in this video is the Broncos and the Jets. I want to circle back to the Broncos because Sean Payton made some very interesting comments earlier this week in an interview, and he basically put former Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett, who's now the Jets offensive coordinator, on blast, basically saying that Hackett did a terrible job in Denver, and that one of his exact quotes kind of was, whatever Nathaniel Hackett did last year, I'm going to do the exact opposite. And so that certainly made some headlines because people were saying, how can Sean Payton, who's an NFL head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, who has a lot of experience as a coordinator, was a first-time head coach last season. I'm not absolving Nathaniel Hackett from the terrible job he did coaching last year, but he was a first-time head coach, and although it didn't go as planned, I wouldn't come out and just blast another NFL head coach like that, especially when he's back united with Aaron Rodgers in New York, because you can say what you want about how he was as a head coach, but you can't deny the success that the two had in Green Bay in the regular season at least. And the Broncos and the Jets play each other in Week 5, and I'm sure that's going to be a game that a lot of people are tuning into, because Sean Payton put a microscope under his team that if they don't come out and win that game, and not even just win that game, but perform this season up to par, there's going to be a lot of issues going on in Denver. The Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2016 and haven't done anything since then. It's kind of weird when you think about it, because they were one of the best teams in like the early 2010s, consistently making the playoffs, and then ever since that Super Bowl season, they have not been able to find really anything. That was the last time they made the playoffs. That year they won the Super Bowl. And this is a big year for Russell Wilson because his career could potentially be on the line. All the stuff that was coming out about him not being a good teammate, not doing the things that people thought that he was doing. And big year for the Broncos up ahead, big year for the Jets. And I want to conclude this video talking about Aaron Rodgers because last week reports came out that he's taking a massive pay cut for the Jets this year, around a $35 million pay cut. And I wanted to touch on that quickly because I think that's interesting. He signed a lot of big contracts in Green Bay that sort of restricted the team in terms of what pieces they were able to put around him to have success on the field. And yes, the Packers are partially at fault for that because they had plenty of opportunities to draft skill players in the first round, chose not to do it. Wide receivers specifically, that's what I mean by skill players. They chose not to do that, but Aaron Rodgers was one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league for a long time, and that obviously didn't give the Packers a lot of room to build around the roster because the quarterback was taking up so much of the salary cap. But things are starting to look different in New York. You know, that opening press conference, Aaron Rodgers really made it sound like he was committed to the Jets. He was committed to bringing another Super Bowl to the Jets. They haven't won one since like the late 60s, I think, or something like that. But if Aaron Rodgers is able to bring a Super Bowl to New York, that's going to do wonders for his career and really his legacy, because we all know that Brett Favre, former Packers quarterback, went to the Jets, didn't really do anything. But Aaron Rodgers getting that second Super Bowl ring already with the 4 MVPs is going to do wonders for how he's viewed as an all-time quarterback, because the Jets have been arguably the biggest laughingstock in sports for basically ever. They haven't done anything since like 2010 when they went to the AFC Championship game. Had a nice season in 2015 with Ryan Fitzpatrick leading the way, but didn't make the playoffs. So, you know, Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner on the defensive side, Quinnen Williams on the defensive side. The Jets are also one of those teams that are going to be under the spotlight this year, because if Aaron Rodgers doesn't have a bounce-back season with the Jets or prove that he can still be an elite quarterback, he may be a guy who may be out the door soon. And the Jets gave up a lot of draft compensation to Green Bay to get him, and they already flopped on Zach Wilson. You can't flop on 2 quarterbacks in a row. It could set the Jets back a lot of years if this move with Aaron Rodgers doesn't work out. So that's what I wanted to talk about in this video, some NFL stories. Jonathan Taylor, big injuries in training camp with Joe Burrow and Jalen Ramsey, and sort of the maybe new rivalry between the Broncos and the Jets that we will see take the field in week 5. Both teams are under a lot of pressure to do something this year. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how both of these teams are going to play. Let me know what you guys think about these topics. Any other things you want to talk about in the comments, basketball, football, anything. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and find the rest of my content linked in the description. Thanks for watching.